Most guys struggle to quit porn because they aren't building the right habits to replace porn. If you want to learn the simple habit replacement system I've used to help thousands of men quit porn and develop self mastery, then click the link in the description below and download my free Reboot Regimen guide. Hey everybody, welcome to Universal Man, where we turn your flight into fight so you can master yourself and conquer your goals. My name is Mark Kweppet, and I'm here to help you sharpen your masculine edge so that you can cut through the resistance that's holding you back from living on the front lines of life and being a man that you admire. And today I am super excited to be introducing the first episode of the Sexual Self-Mastery series. This series is going to be, about developing sexual self-mastery. And in particular, I'm going to be really zeroing in on how to quit porn. Okay? It's been a while since I've really gone in depth on this topic in this channel, but this is where I started. I used to do a ton of content about this stuff, and then, I built up the whole NoFap Academy with Alexander Rhodes, the creator of NoFap, and, I've been constantly doing porn recovery work, but I just haven't been focusing my videos on it. And now I think it's time, it's been, years. I think it's been almost 6 years now since I started doing this work, and I've learned a ton. And so basically the purpose of this series is for me in a sort of long form way to kind of share all of the knowledge I have. My goal is for this series of videos to be the go-to place for any guy who's willing to quit porn and he wants some support to do so. And this is going to be accompanied by another series that I'm going to be doing. It's going to be called Porn Free FAQs, where I basically tackle smaller topics, just smaller one-off questions that a lot of guys have. So this one, though, this is for where I can get in depth on the big ideas that are going to really help you quit porn and transform your life. And for those of you who are wondering a little bit about me, I was a porn addict myself. I struggled with porn for years. I started using it at a young age, and then really, couldn't quit. I'd studied a lot of self-development, like a ton of self-development. I was like, it's like a weird passion of mine that I've been into since I was young. But this was the one thing I couldn't really conquer. I was at a certain point, I was about, was I like 23 or something like that? And I was getting my life coaching certification and starting to build my own business. And all of us, and at that point, I was relapsing probably about every 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. But at that time, that's when I stumbled across NoFap and the online porn recovery movement. Like the guys over at Your Brain on Porn. And I basically learned about the science, and I found the online community. And those were the last two pieces that I needed in order to really, quit porn. Because I had been studying self-development for so long, I had a lot of the other pieces. But what I noticed was that a lot of guys, they didn't know how to approach this. They didn't know where to start, what to do. There's a lot of terrible information out there about how to get yourself to quit porn. And so I decided, you know what? I'm training to be a life coach. I'm trying to find a niche. There's a group of people out here who don't really seem to know the best way to approach things. So I'll do it. I'll put my face on that problem. I'll be the porn guy. And so, that's what I kind of became. And now Universal Man is much more than that. It's about, living beyond just quitting porn. It's about, like I said in the intro, living on the front lines of your life, being a man that you admire. But I think this is kind of the heart of it. This is where it's got to start for a lot of guys. I would argue that quitting porn is the rite of passage for the modern man. And so my goal here is to really support you guys in that. And so in this first episode, what we're going to talk about is why you should quit porn and pursue sexual self-mastery. Pretty plain and simple. But I think a lot of guys understand abstractly that porn's not working for them, that it's hurting them in some way, but they haven't really thought about all the variables. And that's what I want to be doing here, is I want to be breaking that down and then offering you guys a path forward. So let's get into it. So I think a lot of the conversation around the negatives of porn use, a lot of it's focused on sexual areas, but I want to start with looking at the non-sexual ways in which porn negatively affects you. And the biggest one, especially the biggest one that was for me when I was struggling with it, was lack of motivation. Okay. And this is, I think it's huge. And this may not sound like a very acute pain right off the bat, but you got to think about it. It's like, where are you at in your life? Are you happy where you're at? Are you actively moving aggressively toward a better way of living? If not, well, a good chance of that reason for that is because you're probably not motivated to do so. This is what a lot of people struggle with. It's like, they know what they should do or they know what they could do, but they don't really want to do it. And I think porn plays a huge role in that. I know, like, I had all these big aspirations and goals and dreams and things like that, but all I wanted to do was like jerk off and play video games. And that's what I did most of the time. And whenever I got myself to make some kind of progress, it was like through gritted teeth, and it was extremely difficult. And now that I've like looked at this stuff a lot, what I really what I really think is going on here is it's about your neurochemical budget. Okay, so like your brain produces a bunch of different kinds of neurotransmitters, and one of the big ones is dopamine. And dopamine is like the anticipation molecule. This is the thing that makes something sound like a good idea. And it's that feeling of interest, that feeling of attraction, that feeling of anticipation that drives you forward to take action. When you've got dopamine flowing around an activity, it's stimulating. It feels good. You're like invested in it. You want to go out and grab it. And the thing is with porn, it releases a huge amount of dopamine to the point where I don't know if there's any other natural things like that can release that level of dopamine. It's like, you're pretty much looking at drugs at that point, or maybe some kind of, sexual activity. But the thing with porn is that because of the way it works, how novel it is, you can constantly keep releasing that dopamine, because dopamine, one of the things that, it's triggered by is novelty, and porn offers complete unending novelty. And so, and then you accompany that with like this hyper-stimulated orgasm. Basically, the level of stimulation and excitement around porn, it's way up here. It's at like a 9 or a 10, okay? But the issue is, as you're regularly engaging in that sort of activity and using all that dopamine up around that, then I think what ends up happening, well, actually what does end up happening is that your brain starts to become a little desensitized. It's getting so much dopamine that it can actually start shutting down the dopamine receptors. I think that's right. I'm not the science expert, but I mean, I would say it's almost common sense. It's that like if you're constantly exposing yourself to this hyper stimulating thing, then all of a sudden these lesser things, they stop feeling so interesting. They stop feeling interesting at all. Like before, where, just basic rewards like going to the gym, making a meal, making some progress on that project, whatever it is. Before porn, those things might have like elicited a useful amount of dopamine that could, get you motivated and inspired and whatnot. But when you put porn into the mix, all of a sudden these things, they're not even like a blip on your radar. They just feel like chores. And so this leads to this sort of deadened like feeling toward life where, it's like the modern man has so much opportunity, but does he have the will to go out and seize it? Well, no, I would say no, not if he's constantly bombarding his brain with this, super easily accessible, hyper stimulating activity of porn. And so, you cut out the porn, all of a sudden your brain's going to start normalizing and regular things are going to start sounding like way more exciting. So that's the first thing that I think a lot of guys get messed up on. If you want to get out of your parents' basement and start living a real life, well, stop doing the thing that's stealing all your energy, that's stealing all your passion, all your motivation. So, this leads into the next point, which is kind of tied, which is this being trapped in your comfort zone, okay? Like, I think porn puts you in this sedentary lifestyle where you just want comfort. It's like the more comfort you get, the more desensitized to that comfort you become. So the more comfort you then want to grasp on top of it. And on top of that, like your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that's, responsible for your executive decision making, your willpower, that kind of stuff, that part actually starts powering down a little bit. Like the studies have shown that porn addicts suffer from hypofrontality, not hypo. Hypofrontality means that front prefrontal part of your brain, it starts getting decreased blood flow and activity. And so this happens with other addicts too. And it's, associated with an ability to control yourself well. And so, the more you're engaging in this sort of escapist sort of, pleasure seeking activity of porn, the the more you're going to want to keep doing that and other things like it. Like you're going to just want to sit on your couch and watch TV and, do that kind of stuff rather than do the stuff that's really going to move you forward and get you the things that you really want out of life. And so the final sort of non-sexual thing that I think porn really screws you up on is that at its core, it's an act of self-deception. All right. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this topic of self-deception in a future episode of this, because I think it's a really important thing. But, to kind of sum it up here is that, porn it's fake. It's not real. Even if you're watching real people doing real actions on screen, it's on a screen. You're not actually having sex, right? But it creates this scenario where you can trick at least a part of your brain, particularly the part that controls your feel-good neurochemicals, into thinking that it's having a valuable sexual experience. It thinks it's reproducing. It feels like it's being successful. It feels like, and this is intoxicating because when people are not happy, all right? Say you got yelled at by, your boss, or, that girl you talked to, she rejected you, or something else that makes you feel like you're of low status or not good enough. Well, you can always pop on some porn and all of a sudden you're this, super successful alpha stud who's having sex with all these babes, and you get to feel good about yourself. And it's just a lie. It's just a lie. It's just a false self-esteem boost. It's a virtual one. I don't think a lot of guys even think about what they're doing or how it makes them feel, but in the moment, you feel good. You feel like you're doing something of importance and value and achieving something. There's some kind of momentum that happens. And maybe another part of you knows that's complete bullshit, but there's a part of you that it's at least feeling it. Otherwise, why the heck are you doing it? And as you continue to rely on porn to get that sort of feeling, why would you go out and have real success, right? Because, that takes work. What if you can just whip out your cell phone at any time and just turn that feeling on? Well, that's what leads to all these other problems that we're talking about, is that people do that. So this, I think, is a good segue into the sexual problems related with heavy porn use, okay? So the first one I would cite, which was actually a big surprise to me, was that it really inflates your sex drive. And the reason why it was surprising to me was because I just thought that it was natural to have an absolutely insatiable sex drive. I just thought that was the way it was. It's just I'm obsessively horny all the time. It's all I can think about. And, I literally, if I don't have it, I'm going to die. And this was what I felt for a huge amount of my life. And you might argue, oh man, that is natural. That's just hormones. I'm not saying that it's not normal for a guy to be extremely interested in sex, especially during, like teenage years and things like that. Hormones are flowing. Absolutely. But I think it goes way too far for a lot of guys. And I think it's because they've basically trained this beast. They've created this monster inside of them that is expecting all of this pleasure. And to make matters worse, I think that when you continuously treat other problems with porn, so loneliness, sadness, stress, whatever, instead of actually feeling those core emotions anymore of, the negative thing, your brain just says, all right, well, the antidote to these things is porn. So we're not even going to tell you that we're upset about that stuff anymore. We're just going to tell you that we want porn. And it creates this scenario where you think all you want is sex and sexual stimulation and porn and stuff like that, when in reality, you got these other issues that you've just habituated yourself to using porn to cope with. So it creates this hyper-inflated sex drive, okay? And then, in order to feed that sex drive, you have to keep looking at all this kind of porn. And very often what ends up happening is it leads to some kind of escalation in what you're viewing, some kind of escalation in your fetishes. So let's think about it, all right? So, maybe when you first started looking at porn, any pair of boobs would turn you on, okay? But after you look at thousands and thousands of boobs and masturbate to them, all of a sudden your brain starts forming a hierarchy of lesser boobs and better boobs, okay? And so you start gravitating toward these better boobs, and you watch thousands of videos of them, and then all of a sudden your taste becomes more refined, and then all of a sudden you can only masturbate to perfect boobs. And so you went from a normal attraction to breasts to this hyper intense breast fetish. And sometimes it doesn't even follow like a trajectory like that. Sometimes it can go off in very, odd ways, and you can find yourself hooked on extreme, unsettling, strange kinds of porn that don't really line up with your authentic tastes. It's just that you've desensitized your brain and sent it on a journey, and all of a sudden it's hooked on all this crazy stuff that you may not be very happy with. And there is a thing, I would say there are natural fetishes and stuff, but I think that porn can take a natural fetish and completely ramp it up into an inflated, unnatural level, which is not going to serve you well, because most of the time when they start getting to that extreme end, it's going to be very difficult for you to find any sort of real relationship where that can actually, that fetish can be met. And I think that that's just, that's unhealthy. And that doesn't serve you if you're looking for a longer term real relationship, which, I hope that through the process of quitting porn, you realize that is what you really want. So what else is there sexually? All right. Well, I mean, there's obviously compulsive sexual behavior. It's like, you just have to touch yourself, and when you're like, as soon as you're turned on, or like, you can't control your eyes around attractive women, that sort of compulsion is very, very common. And it's also unsightly. A guy who can't control his eyes is viewed, I should say rightly so, as lesser, as a pig, because what you're showing is that you do not have self-discipline. And personally, I don't think that that's a good quality to display, and I think ultimately makes you less attractive to women if that's something that you care about. And then once you start getting into relationships, then things start getting even more screwed up. So like, it can ruin sex, like real sex, first through dysfunction. All right. So like, a lot of guys have erectile dysfunction today, way more than ever before. And doctors scratching their heads like, why do we got all these teenagers and 20-somethings coming in with ED? This is unheard of. Well, if you're repeatedly training your brain to think that sex means mouse, keyboard, and hand lotion, well, eventually it's going to learn that that's what it is. And then when it's presented with the real thing, it's like, hey, this isn't sex. Where's my keyboard? What's this butt doing here? It's like, what's this vagina? What's this human? Like, it's saying, give me my sexual apparatus, which is a screen, a mouse, a keyboard, and some hand lotion, right? Or whatever the heck it is you use. It's like, you train your brain, it's going to stop responding to real sex. And so, you got erectile dysfunction, you got delayed ejaculation, like guys who just can't finish because they can't get the level of stimulation that they're looking for. And then, on top of this, you got a whole bunch of other psychological aspects. So it's like, you can start building up these completely unrealistic expectations of what sex should look like, what your partner should look like, how they should behave. And then, being unable to create sexual intimacy. Sex is supposed to be an intimate act, not to be something that's just like a slam bam, thank you, ma'am. Let's be on your way. It's like, it's not supposed to be you just like injecting your arm with heroin. It's not this impersonal thing. It's supposed to be one of the most intimate acts that two people can engage in. Okay? But if you just turn it into this mechanism for scratching an itch, then that's all it becomes. And you miss out on all the fullness that real sex, I think, has to offer. Now, the final area that I think porn is this big issue, and why you should quit it. Maybe I'm going to sound a little dramatic here, but it's really what I believe. And I think that if you think about it for a little bit, you can see that it's true. All right. So let's look at society. All right. What is society composed of? Right. Well, it's got communities and cities and, government and all that kind of stuff. But if we start like zeroing down into the units of society, one of the smallest kind of stable units is the family unit, right? Okay. And so what's a family unit comprised of? Primarily, what has it been, throughout the course of our evolution? Well, it's been a husband and a wife. Okay. That they're at the core of it, and then their kids. Okay. And obviously there are other family structures and whatever, but this is the one that's gotten humans to here. Okay. And so you got the husband and the wife, and what is their union based upon? Okay, well, it's based upon their sexual relationship. Without sex, there is no husband and wife, right? And so at the very center of the core unit of society, we've got sexuality, all right? And if sexuality gets screwed up, well, I believe there's ripples across the entire society, because it's like kicking out like a table leg, all right? If you got a table with 4 legs and you kick out one of the legs, the whole thing's going to become completely unstable. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, like, you look at the divorce rates that exist, it's like 50% or something like that, something crazy. And, you look at how divorce affects children and people, it's hugely impactful. And a large percentage of divorces, an extremely high percentage, they cite pornography as one of the reasons. So it's like, if we can clean up our sexual selves, we can learn how to kick the porn and learn how to develop real intimacy, real self-discipline, real self-care, all this kind of stuff. I think we can really actually change the course of society. I think it matters that much, because the ripple effects over time through, kids raised in, whole families with like present fathers who, are not, jerking off to porn while they're asleep. Like, I think that that's how you create a good society. That's how you create good people. And so, like, I think it's of paramount importance, for the sake of ourselves and for future generations, that we start this movement and that we get guys free from this kind of stuff. Okay, I really think it's that important. So, what are you going to do? Well, I say, let's do it. Let's cut the porn out, right? That's why that's why I'm making this whole series. And so, if you're not familiar with the process, the core idea is the one of reboot. Okay, this is the popular concept that has caught on, and I'm honestly not entirely sure who originated it, but I know it's been talked about a lot through Your Brain on Porn and NoFap and those guys, and they've done a great job. But if you haven't heard of it, the basic idea is this, all right? If you take a break from porn, eventually your brain will reset to normal levels. It's kind of like if your computer is functioning poorly, then you can reset your computer, and all of a sudden a lot of the problems will be fixed. It'll kind of just like go back to default settings. And that seems to be what happens. And there are hundreds, maybe there's got to be thousands of rebooting accounts that exist now. And you can go look them up, check them out. YourBrainOnPorn.com, NoFap.com. Look at their rebooting accounts. There's so many of people talking about how all these changes, all the negative effects that, I just like went through, about how they disappeared by quitting porn, just changing one variable. It's insane. And so this is what you got to do. And and so this is what you got to do. And the way that I would recommend doing it, I mean, there's different kind of flavors of reboot. I would recommend the hard mode reboot. And that means a period for at least like 90 days of complete and total abstinence. No porn, no masturbation, no sex. Okay. Even if you're married, right? And doing that offers you the best chance of rebooting. And I'm actually going to do another episode talking about why hard mode is the best. So, for right now, just hopefully, take my word on it, or, wait for that episode. But, that's what's going to give you the best chance of really letting your brain fully heal and rewire and return to a healthier and natural state. Now, this is difficult, all right? It's a challenging process. A lot of guys fail and relapse many, many times before they successfully leave porn behind, like for good, okay? And part of the reason for that is that we are not naturally adapted to deny ourselves that kind of sexual stimulation. Like, we evolved to pretty much take the sexual opportunities in front of us with like a bit of self-control, okay? And that exists in there. If we want more self-control, we have to build it, all right? It doesn't exist instinctually inside of us. And so it's up to us through our mechanisms of socialization and stuff like that and personal discipline to develop that skill, all right? And it's hard when you got withdrawal symptoms, because there are withdrawal symptoms. You're going to crave. You might deal with emotional mood swings, irritability. I'll talk more about, the different kinds of things you can expect in other videos, but, it's not an easy process. It's not, all just sunshine and roses, okay? There's a cost here. And so in order to do this, you need to work on yourself. you need to get your lifestyle in order to support this process. And you also need to make sure you get your mindset in the right place, because you got to learn how to talk to yourself. You need to learn how to work with yourself when you're craving and you're filled with all these urges to watch porn. And it's challenging. But the thing is, if you do this work, all right, I would argue that this puts you within the elite of modern masculinity. Okay. All throughout history, there were always, elite men, okay? And very often they were tied to like fighting forces and things like that. And we still have that, today. But in my estimation, going from a porn addict to living porn free is a fundamentally different process than one that's like really ever existed in humanity, because never before have we had our drug dealer in our pocket. Never. We've never been able to, like, the level of self-control you need to have in order to have one of these things and not use it for porn as a man, especially after you've already formed the habit, is absurd. Okay. But here's the opportunity, is that you can become that absurd man. You can become that exceptional man who is, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000. I don't really know. I mean, like, it is not common to develop this level of self-discipline, but you can do it. And if you do it, guess what that unlocks for you? Mostly what you want in life. Pretty much whatever you want to go for, you can do. If you can develop the self-discipline to quit porn and stay clean, you can do anything. All right. I'm pretty convinced of that. And so, that's what I've seen in myself, right? And I've seen this in a lot of people too. It's like a lot of guys have said, I've quit alcohol, quit like drugs, but man, I can't quit porn. Because it's hard, it's different, it's a different process. And so, we need different tools, and that's what I'm interested in providing here. I don't think 12-step works super well for someone trying to quit porn. You need more specific tools. You need better leadership. You need a better crew. And so this is what I'm trying to provide. Like, we've got understanding. That's the first big piece. And that's what, like, this podcast and, my courses and stuff like that, that'll equip you with. You need to have understanding so that you know what to do, how to deal with what's coming up, what's going on, that sort of thing. The other thing is you need a practical plan, which, again, I'm going to hopefully be able to lay out for you. And if you want to jumpstart yourself on that, well, then, check out my Reboot Regimen guide. All right. This thing it's a short guide, but it's simple, but it's pretty comprehensive. It will help you build a foundation that will absolutely optimize your ability to quit porn. And, you need to have lifestyle changes. You can't just try and cut porn out and leave everything else the same. It doesn't work like that. It creates too big of a vacuum. You lean on it too much. There needs to be other structural changes in your lifestyle and in your mindset. So you need a plan. And then finally, you need some kind of accountability. You need someone there who can, ask you and be like, how you doing, dude? Are you staying clean or are you relapsing? Because this is something that needs to be talked about. And, there's a tremendous amount of support in social interaction. All right. Like, our human brain is designed socially. All right. And because of that, there are certain levels of power and motivation and focus that can only be triggered through social interaction. It's actually a power to rely on other people, to interact with other people. It actually unlocks parts of your brain that are saved literally for social interaction. And so it's like, get yourself in a community. You can join the Universal Man community, which, I'll talk a little bit more about at the end of this video. Or you can just do one of the free online ones, whatever. But you got to get yourself a group of people that you can lean on, that you can get inspiration from, that you can learn from, all that kind of stuff. So you need understanding, you need a plan, and you need accountability. And if you can get those things in place, well, then you can complete this reboot. You can quit porn. And then you can become that man that you want to be. And that's what it's all about. It's becoming someone that you admire, not someone that you need to hide away, pieces of them because they're dirty and you don't like what he does and you don't like what he thinks and it doesn't represent your authentic self. Well, let's cut that guy out. Let's set him free. We're gonna, and on one level, there's a death that has to occur. That death, that part of you that's just, addicted to that stuff that's really just not good for you. That death of the part of you that actually wants your own destruction, that doesn't truly serve your best interests. But there also needs to be a rebirth here. There needs to be a rebirth where you're born as a new man. A new part of you is born that is more aligned more focused, more disciplined, more moral, all that kind of stuff. And this is a process that thousands of guys have gone through. You can go through it too. So I believe in you. I'm here for you. And please, come along with me on this journey. I'll do my best to support you in this process. Okay, so that's it for this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, if you found this episode useful and you want to hear more, make sure you like, subscribe, and if you're tuning in on YouTube, make sure you hit that bell button to turn on notifications. But if you really like this content and you would like to join the tribe of Universal Men, then you need to head on over to the Universal Man Patreon page by clicking the link in the description. We call ourselves the Vanguard because we are committed to living on the front lines of life. By joining, you'll gain access to exclusive content, weekly accountability, community chat rooms, and live calls. Also, by joining the Vanguard, you become a part of my inner circle. Therefore, you get my prioritized attention. Most importantly, though, you'll be joining a crew of like-minded guys that can help support and inspire you on your journey of masculine self-mastery. So click the link below and sign up today.